Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into a time that's rustic, unsanitary, and absolutely not ergonomic. Welcome to medieval life. You're about to wake up in a century where deodorant hasn't been invented, shoes are a luxury, and your mattress might double as animal feed. The year: roughly 1347. The plague is around. Hygiene is optional. And unfortunately for you, there is no skip button. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your eyes to a ceiling made of dark wooden beams, sagging ever so slightly, with bits of straw poking through. The room smells faintly of wet wool, stale air, and something that could either be onions or very old socks. A shaft of morning light slants through the gaps in the wooden shutters, if you can call them that, throwing narrow beams across your blanket, which, incidentally, is a horsehair sheet. Cozy. You shift, and the straw-stuffed mattress beneath you rustles like a bag of angry squirrels. As you move to sit up, you realize something is already sitting on your chest. A chicken. Just staring. Possibly judging. It clucks once before hopping off, leaving behind a feather, and what you pray is just dust. The bed isn't really a bed. It's a wooden box stuffed with straw and hay, layered with a burlap sack that's absorbed the stories and the sweat of many nights. Your pillow, if it can be called that, is a bundled tunic from the night before. It smells like firewood, sweat, and possibly goat. The room is not yours alone. There's a snoring lump of a body on the floor, someone's uncle, maybe, or the neighbor whose wife threw him out again. Privacy isn't exactly a medieval concept. There's also a dog near the hearth, twitching in his sleep, and what looks like a small child curled up in a basket. No one's sure who he belongs to. He might be a cousin. You sit up, which takes effort. Your back cracks in 6 places. Your knees pop like old hinges. You're maybe 25 years old, but you feel 80. A draft seeps in through the wall, reminding you that insulation hasn't been invented yet. The window has no glass, just a cloth nailed over it. It flaps softly in the breeze like it's waving goodbye to your body heat. There's a pot in the corner, the chamber pot. You stare at it. It stares back. It's either the most terrifying or the most practical thing in this room, depending on how desperate you are. Its contents are a mystery. You consider stepping outside, but remember that last week someone saw a wolf in the alley. You sigh and shuffle toward it like a condemned soul. Nature addressed, you return to the bed and begin the ritual of dressing. Your clothes are right where you left them, on the floor near the fire. Damp. One of your hose has a hole the size of your thumb. You slide it on anyway. The tunic smells faintly of mildew and cabbage. A belt, more rope than leather, completes the look. Fashion isn't a thing here. Warmth is. There's no mirror, which is a blessing, because your hair is its own small rebellion, and your face is more grime than face. Somewhere in town there's a barber who'll scrape your stubble with a dull blade and a prayer, but not today. As you step into your boots, hard leather, no insoles, cold as betrayal, you notice the floor. It's stone, uneven and cracked. A small puddle has formed near the door. Is it water? Is it something else? Historians still argue whether medieval floors were mopped or just accepted. You glance around the room once more. A spider lazily descends from a ceiling beam, stops halfway, decides it's not worth it, and climbs back up. The rooster crows outside, like he's mocking you. The day has begun, And so has your first full hour of regretting time travel. Your stomach growls loudly. Breakfast is coming, but it won't be much. Hopefully someone remembered to soak the oats last night. You think about bacon, toast, coffee. Then remember that pigs are expensive, toast is a luxury, and coffee won't reach Europe for another 100 years. You sigh loudly. The chicken clucks again, possibly in agreement. You step outside. The cold hits you like betrayal. Your breath clouds the air, and the smell of the village, smoke, manure, and humanity, greets you with a full-bodied hug. Children chase each other near the well. A man walks by with a cart full of leeks. A woman empties a chamber pot into the gutter with the precision of a grenade toss. You feel deeply, existentially unready. And it's only dawn. Your feet make an unpleasant slapping sound as you step back inside, the thin soles of your boots doing exactly nothing to protect you from the icy sting of the stone floor. The cold bites right through the leather, right through your socks, which, to be clear, are not knitted but just rough scraps of fabric tied with string, and right into your toes. You make a mental note to thank whoever invented central heating in a few centuries. If you survive that long. Your hands are stiff as you fumble with the flint. The hearth has gone out overnight, as usual, because no one wants to waste wood keeping warm while asleep. That would be ridiculous. You strike the flint 3 times, 4, 5. A spark finally catches, and the damp twigs start to smoke like they're personally offended. Eventually, a faint flame flickers to life. It's not much, but it's enough to thaw your fingers and remind you that smoke inhalation is definitely a thing. There's no running water. There's also no still water, at least, not inside. Outside, the well awaits. But the well is a solid 5-minute walk across the village square, which may not sound like much until you remember you're cold, tired, hungry, and, possibly, still dreaming. You squint into the corner where the washing basin sits. Someone, probably Martha, has left half a bucket of water from yesterday. It's cloudy. Something is floating in it. You poke it. It doesn't move. You splash some on your face anyway. It's an experience. Refreshing, in the same way that getting slapped with a wet fish is refreshing. No soap, of course. You scrub your teeth with a twig, chewed at one end like a sad, leafy toothbrush. It tastes like wood, because it is wood. You try to ignore the sensation of bark peeling across your molars. A little vinegar, maybe a dab of salt if you're fancy, and your morning hygiene routine is complete. Your breath now smells like forest salad. Romantic. Historians still argue whether people in the Middle Ages cared much about personal hygiene. Some records say they washed regularly with water and herbal rinses. Others imply that smelling like you lived in a barn was part of the aesthetic. Based on your experience so far, you're siding with Team Barn. You hear footsteps outside. Heavy, squelching, and unmistakably irritated. The front door creaks open. There's no lock, just a wooden bar, and in walks your cousin, or neighbor, or perhaps both. He's holding a bucket and looks like he's aged 10 years overnight. Judging by the mud on his face, he's already been to the well. You make eye contact. No words are exchanged. He just sighs and points at the bucket in the corner. Translation: it's your turn tomorrow. Breakfast is imminent, which is to say, someone is boiling a pot of something, and you are expected to eat it. The cauldron, yes, cauldron, is bubbling in the hearth, full of what looks like glue and smells like regret. Porridge, or gruel, or some ambiguous middle ground. You sit on a low stool and accept a chipped wooden bowl of it. No spoon. You drink it like soup. It is gray. It is lukewarm. It has texture, but not in a good way. There's no milk. The cow dried up last month. There's no honey. That's for rich people. There might be a single shred of dried apple floating in it, but that could also be a leaf. You eat it anyway, because that's what's for breakfast. Every day. Always. As you chew, you remember reading once, probably on the internet, in that other life, that medieval peasants had surprisingly healthy diets full of grains and vegetables. You contemplate this as someone across the room coughs directly into their bowl, and then keeps eating. You revise your earlier optimism. Conversation over breakfast is minimal. Words are expensive, and everyone is too busy chewing their way through industrial-grade carbohydrates. Someone farts. No one reacts. You begin to understand why people got married at 14. There wasn't much else to do. The fire crackles. A bit of porridge drips down your chin. A child somewhere is crying about the texture. Another child is trying to barter half a crust of bread for the chance to lick someone else's bowl. You get the sense that everyone here is simultaneously full and unsatisfied. Outside, a bell rings. 3 short clangs, 1 long. It's not a school bell. It's the town signal that work begins. You glance around and see the household rise as one, like a tired, itchy tide. No one speaks. No one smiles. They just trudge toward the door like it's the final level of a game they don't remember signing up for. You follow. Your job today, not clear. Probably the same as yesterday. Fetch water, haul wood, chase pigs, sweep filth, avoid eye contact with the reeve. A man once got conscripted just for making eye contact. Or maybe it was because he spat on the church steps. Or maybe it was because his hat looked French. Hard to say. You step outside again. The sun is higher now, casting gold across the village roofs. It's almost beautiful. Almost. Until you step in something squishy. Probably manure. Possibly from a goat. Possibly from a human. You look up at the sky, as if hoping it might rescue you. It does not. In the distance, you hear someone shout something about pigs being loose near the bakery. The shout is followed by a crash, then the unmistakable squealing of chaos. You adjust your belt, sigh through your nose, and march toward the sound. Because it's medieval times, and apparently, those pigs are your problem now. You trudge toward the bakery, which is less a building and more a smoky brick oven attached to someone's house. The pigs, 3 of them, are trotting in delighted little circles, their tails bouncing like punctuation marks. One of them has what might be a bread roll in its mouth. The baker, an older woman with forearms like tree trunks and an expression that could curdle milk, is chasing them with a broom. "You!" she yells, spotting you like a hawk eyeing an underqualified mouse. "Do something useful." And just like that, you're officially part of a medieval pig chase. You dart forward in your stiff boots, slipping slightly on the muddy cobblestones. The pigs are fast. They squeal and zigzag like greased lightning. One runs between your legs, knocking your dignity slightly off balance. The baker throws her broom like a javelin. It misses the pig but strikes a bystander's bucket. That bucket was full of something foul. Now it's not. You pause. Regret your life choices. Then keep running. Eventually, with the help of 2 passing children and a very lazy dog, the pigs are wrangled into a pen. The baker mutters something about lazy fools, and not like in my day, and thrusts a half-burnt crust of bread into your hands as payment. You nod politely. The crust is mostly charcoal, but you gnaw on it anyway. Now it's time for the next part of your medieval morning routine. oral hygiene. You return home, if you can call it that, and dig into the woven basket near the hearth where everyone keeps their toiletries. Your toothbrush is a frayed stick, about the length of your finger, with one end chewed soft. You insert it into your mouth and begin the delicate art of tooth scraping. The taste, bitter. The texture, like chewing on a pine cone. Historians agree that tooth care in the Middle Ages was surprisingly attentive, if wildly inconsistent. Chewing sticks made of hazel, ash, or even sweet flagroot were common. Some rubbed their teeth with ashes or salt. Some used vinegar rinses. A few nobles even had proto-toothpicks carved from ivory. You have a twig, possibly borrowed from a broom. You rub the twig along your teeth and gums, hoping for the best. The vinegar rinse burns slightly. You hope that means it's working, or at least sterilizing the flavor of pig chase. You remember reading that Queen Elizabeth I had blackened teeth from sugar, which became a status symbol. In your case, the only thing blackening your teeth is probably fungus. Status. Pending. You spit into the ashes near the hearth. Something hisses. You pretend you didn't hear that. Time to freshen up. You ladle a small cup of yesterday's water from the bucket. It's cold. Very cold. You splash it on your face. A scream catches in your throat. Your pores tighten in terror. You dry off with what is either a towel or someone's old tunic. Either way, it's scratchy. No soap. Soap is for the rich. Soap is also possibly made with lye and smells like goats, so you're not terribly upset. Instead, you scrub your hands with a handful of sand from a basin. Exfoliating. Absolutely. Pleasant. Not even a little. You glance around at the others beginning their hygiene rituals. One woman is brushing her hair with a wooden comb that's missing half its teeth. A man is scraping dirt from his fingernails with a knife. A child is licking a stone. You decide not to ask. Somewhere, a rooster crows again. That rooster is beginning to feel personal. A neighbor enters with news. The tanner has lost a shipment of hides, and the blacksmith's apprentice has burned his eyebrows off. Again. You nod solemnly, as if these things affect you deeply. The neighbor offers you a sip from a wooden flask. You accept. It's not water. It's ale. Flat, sour, and warm, but at least it's not water. In the Middle Ages, people often drank ale or wheat beer instead of water, which could be contaminated with all sorts of microscopic horrors. You sip cautiously and feel a momentary warmth spread across your ribs. Then a hiccup. Then nothing. You thank the neighbor. He nods once and leaves. Social grace achieved. There's a moment of stillness. The fire crackles. The hearth glows softly. You hear distant bells from the church tower, marking the hour. Maybe 10. Maybe 9. No one has a clock. You just know that it's time for more work. But you pause. Something about this moment feels almost domestic. Like, if you squint, this could be cozy. You're surrounded by smells, yes, mostly bad ones, but also by people who know your name, who might share their bread, who might even help you chase pigs. Then you remember you don't have a toothbrush anymore. The twig snapped in half mid-brushing. You tried to hide it under the straw mattress, but now your mouth tastes like bark and failure. Still, the day marches on. The village waits. You rise slowly, stretch your stiff limbs, and step outside again. The morning fog has lifted. Smoke rises in thin trails from thatched rooftops. Chickens scratch the dirt. Somewhere, a man sneezes so loudly it startles a horse. You head off toward your next task, wondering if you'll finally get to do something less messy, less chaotic, less humiliating. Spoiler: you won't. Your next stop is breakfast's less glamorous cousin, second breakfast. It's not called that, of course. No one's quoting hobbits around here, but around this time of day, you're expected to eat something small to get through the labor ahead. The bad news? It's gruel. Again. A thin woman with strong arms, and the kind of eyes that we've seen too much hands you a cup of it. This batch is slightly thicker. That is not a compliment. You gulp it down, appreciating how it clings to your throat like regret. There's a faint sweetness to it this time, which raises immediate suspicion. Was this meant to be savory? Was this batch somehow cursed? No one knows. You ask nothing. You just chew. Around you, the town square begins to animate. It's market day. Stalls are unfolding like awkward origami across the muddy cobbles, filled with baskets of turnips, bundles of leeks, and bread that looks like it's already been chewed by time. You pass a woman selling eels out of a barrel. They're still alive. One of them tries to climb out. She gently taps it back down with a ladle and smiles. You shiver. You stop at a bread stall. The loaves are dense, round, and roughly the size of your face. You reach for one, but the baker glares. You got salt license? He asks. You pause. But here's where things get weird. In medieval England, for example, there were actual laws about who could bake bread, and how and with what. Salt, flour ratios, even oven usage were all regulated by guilds, fines, and obscure local customs. Some places even banned private baking altogether to avoid undercooked loaves causing illness, or just to keep the baker's monopoly strong. In your village, you're apparently not allowed to bake bread with salt unless you pay a tax. Someone once tried to dodge it by baking without salt, but the resulting loaf was so inedible it sparked an argument that's still going 3 winters later. You look around. No salt license in your pockets. No pockets either, actually. Just the rope belt. You give the baker a polite nod and slowly back away. He doesn't blink. The eel woman winks at you. To distract yourself, you step into the tavern. It's dark, smoky, and smells like fermented ambition. A few men are already seated, sipping small mugs of ale and muttering about taxes, rats, and the suspicious new dye merchant. You take a seat on a bench that wobbles slightly when you breathe. A boy walks past carrying a tray of something that might be cheese. Or soap. Or soap pretending to be cheese. You decide not to find out. Instead, you overhear a conversation at the next table about a local man who tried to invent a bread cooling shelf. He was fined for witchcraft. Naturally. The town reeve enters, tall and smug, his official hat looking like someone sat on a pie. He's checking people's market permits. You shrink in your seat. You have no permit, or name badge, or identification. No one does. Bureaucracy is mostly guesswork and loud declarations here. Someone stands too slowly and knocks over a mug. The reeve frowns. A hush falls over the tavern. You feel the tension in your shoulders rise like sourdough. Then the reeve sneezes. Violently. A man in the corner yells, "Bless you!" and the room exhales. Crisis averted. Apparently sneezing etiquette is more serious than permit enforcement today. You leave the tavern and wander past the fishmonger's stall. He's arguing with a customer over the freshness of a trout that's clearly seen better centuries. A cat slinks past your legs. A child throws a rock at a cart and pretends it wasn't him. You find yourself next to a booth selling candles. Beeswax ones are expensive. Tallow candles are cheaper but smell like death's armpit. Still, they're necessary. Sundown will come early, and without candles, your home becomes a medieval cave of stubbed toes and unseen rats. You buy a stub of one, half used, half melted, maybe third hand. The seller throws in a lump of wax with a wink. For luck, she says. Historians still argue whether medieval markets were more chaotic or communal. Some claim they were tight-knit, supportive affairs full of bartering and storytelling. Others say they were breeding grounds for disease, rumor, and overpriced onions. So far, your experience suggests both might be true. A bell rings again. It's time to return to the fields, or rather, to whatever task fate throws at you next. You glance down at your boots, now coated in at least 3 kinds of mud and possibly some eel. You sigh. You step into the road. A horse snorts at you with disdain. You've survived breakfast. Kind of. You've avoided a fine. Mostly. You've acquired a candle that might be cursed. Definitely. The day rolls on. Your stomach is already growling again. Somewhere, the eel woman is still watching you. You return home briefly to drop off the candle stub, placing it near the hearth like some sacred relic of questionable value, and gear up for the labor ahead. Gear up here meaning, tighten the rope belt, adjust the potato sack tunic, and stretch your back until something audibly cracks. You're ready. Or at least, you're upright. Today, you've drawn the short straw, hauling water. Again. You grab the 2 wooden buckets with rope handles and set off toward the village well. The buckets are heavier than you'd like even when empty, and they creak ominously like they know what's coming. The path to the well winds past the butcher, the cooper, and what may or may not be someone selling homemade elixirs out of sheep bladders. You avoid eye contact with everyone, especially the goose that has followed you for 3 days straight. It's beginning to feel personal. At the well, a small line has formed. A boy is singing to himself while dangling a string. An old woman is muttering about the quality of rope these days. The air smells faintly of smoke, moldy hay, and potatoes? Could be anything. You wait your turn. When it finally arrives, you lower the bucket slowly, listening to the creaking rope echo into the stone shaft. Splash. Then the long, aching crank to haul it up. Water sloshes over your shoes, and you pretend not to feel it seeping in. Repeat for the second bucket. Your arms are already tired. That's just the preview. The return walk is where the real fun begins. Each step sends the bucket handles digging into your palms. The water sloshes out with every bump, meaning you'll probably lose a good quarter of it before you even reach your door. The mud grips your boots like a toddler in meltdown. Your back begins to ache. Your neck itches. And you're not even halfway home. Medieval daily labor is not romantic. It's relentless, repetitive, and entirely unfiltered. Historians generally agree that peasant workdays ran from sunup to sundown, though there's debate about whether this included seasonal rest or Sunday breaks. What's not debated is that your spine did not sign up for this. You pass a friend on the road, Tom, maybe, or Joffrey, carrying firewood. He nods at you with a grim, knowing look. You respond with a grunt, the universal medieval expression of solidarity. Neither of you can raise a hand to wave, not without spilling your burdens. Emotions are for people who've finished hauling things. By the time you reach home, your shoulders are screaming. You set the buckets down with a sigh that turns into a wheeze. You stretch, then regret it immediately. You glance down and see one of the buckets is now only half full. That's fine. Everyone loves watered-down water. Your next task: manure. Because what is life without a little humbling? A neighbor calls from the fence. His goat pen has overflowed. He offers you a few brass coins if you help him shovel out the mess. You consider saying no, then remember that brass coins can buy bread, or ale, or something you can use to bribe a child into doing your work tomorrow. You accept. You borrow a shovel. It's warped, cracked, and smells like everything you fear. The pen is knee-deep in muck. The goat watches you with eyes full of judgment. You begin to shovel. 10 minutes in, your arms have fully detached from your will to live. 20 minutes in, your tunic is splattered with things best left unnamed. 30 minutes in, you've stopped caring and begun singing quietly to distract yourself. It's a song about cabbage and regret. The goat bleats. You bleat back. It's a moment. You finish the task, return the shovel, and receive 3 shiny brass coins. You don't even inspect them. You just nod your thanks and limp away. You are now officially a medieval entrepreneur. Back home, you splash your hands with water from the bucket. Yes, the same one you just hauled, and scrub with a bit of leftover sand. The sand bites your skin, but at least it removes the worst of the goat-related residue. There is no soap. There is no hand towel. Just air drying and hope. At this point, your body is confused. You've been awake for what feels like years, eaten 2 forms of gruel, sprinted after pigs, nearly been fined over salt, and now reek faintly of goat. And it's barely midday. You sit down by the hearth, legs trembling. A child runs past, laughing. Another child is crying. The village reeve walks by the window, muttering to himself. Someone is ringing a bell somewhere, again. You don't even ask what it means anymore. The bells ring constantly. They could mean prayer, or bread, or impending doom. Hard to say. Historians still debate whether peasants were always exhausted or just used to being uncomfortable. Some argue they took short naps during the day. Others claim naps were a luxury. You decide to nap anyway, just for 5 minutes. You wake up an hour later. Your mouth is dry. Your back hurts more. A chicken has taken your spot on the bench. You shoo it off and stand slowly. Time for the next job. You shuffle back out into the village square, rubbing your shoulder with one hand and waving off a persistent fly with the other. The midday sun has reached its peak, not that you can tell by warmth, since the clouds have formed a solid gray dome above. Still, you squint upward and decide it's probably noon. Or close enough. There's no official lunch break, just hunger and timing. You check your coin pouch. 3 brass bits from your manure adventures jingle inside. Wealth. Sort of. You approach a stall selling boiled roots and barley cakes. The vendor, an elderly man with a beard so wispy it could double a spiderweb, squints at your coins, then sniffs the nearest one before nodding. Transaction complete. He hands you a barley cake wrapped in a scrap of linen that might once have been part of someone's curtain. You bite in. It's dry. It crumbles like ancient parchment in your mouth. You chew anyway. It tastes vaguely of smoke and bitter herbs. You tell yourself that's seasoning. While you eat, you overhear a conversation nearby about the baker's son. Apparently he tried to mix ground acorns into the flour again to make it nutty. The entire village ended up constipated for 3 days. No one wants to talk about it, but they all do anyway. You polish off the last bite of your cake, tongue scraping the crumbs from your thumb. It was barely food, but it'll keep you upright for another hour. Hopefully. Now it's time to head to the field. You walk past the row of homes and toward the outer edge of the village, where the land opens up into rough plots. The soil is damp, uneven, and full of surprises. Most of them rocks, the rest worms the size of your fingers. A man hands you a wooden hoe, already slick with mud. You accept your fate. Your job, turn the soil. All of it, by hand. You lean into the work, using your full weight to cut into the earth. Each stroke brings up more mud, more worms, and occasionally, some ancient-looking root that tries to fight back. Your boots sink slightly with every step. After 10 minutes, your forearms feel like they're detaching from your shoulders. After 20, you're hallucinating encouraging words from the dirt. A woman 2 rows over is humming to herself while planting onions. She seems fine. You are not fine. You are dying. Quietly, in a rhythmic, muddy way. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants worked themselves to death or simply to exhaustion. Records suggest they labored heavily during planting and harvest seasons, but also took feast days off. Of course, off usually meant more church, not hammocks and wine. You pause to catch your breath. A small boy offers you a sip from his flask. You accept. It's watered-down ale, the medieval equivalent of a juice box. You nod your thanks. Back to work. You swing the hoe again. Your hands are blistering. Your shoulders scream. Your lower back is already filing a formal complaint. And yet, you continue. Because the field won't till itself. Because you need the coin. And because someone in the distance is yelling something about bread fines again, and you'd rather be here than involved in that. At one point, you hit something solid. Not a rock, wood. You dig around it. A buried plank? A coffin? No, just someone's long-lost fence post. You sigh and toss it aside, now thoroughly not curious. The man next to you wipes his forehead and says, "Nice weather today." It's raining. Lightly. Possibly sleet. You nod in agreement. In the Middle Ages, small talk is less about accuracy and more about mutual survival. By late afternoon, the light starts to dim. Your hands are caked in mud. Your knees ache. Your soul has detached slightly and is hovering just behind your left shoulder. Time to wrap up. You trudge back to the village with a group of equally broken laborers. No one talks. Not because they're unfriendly, just because they're out of breath, vocabulary, and hope. Someone passes around a hunk of cheese that may or may not be moving. You decline. Back home, you scrape the mud from your boots with a flat stone and leave them by the door. You stretch. Something in your back goes ping. You pretend that's normal. You wash your hands in yesterday's water. It's now more broth than water, but you use it anyway. Dinner is, well, it's similar to breakfast. A bowl of stew, heavy on the cabbage and light on everything else. You sit by the fire and eat slowly, savoring the warmth more than the flavor. Someone is playing a lute nearby. Badly. But it's music. You'll take it. As the fire crackles and your body begins to stiffen like old bread, you consider everything you've done today. You've chased pigs, hauled water, shoveled manure, paid an eel woman, dodged a salt fine, and tilled land like your life depended on it, which it kind of did. You're 5 hours into the day, maybe 6, and it's already too much. Welcome to the peasant class. Hope you like cabbage. You wake from what could barely be called a nap, your forehead resting against the dinner table, which itself is just a wide, splintery plank balanced across 2 barrels. A line of drool marks your resting spot, a medieval pillow, if you will. Outside, the bells ring again. You've long since stopped asking what they mean. By this point, your body simply hears a bell and sighs on instinct. It's evening now, and you hear the clinking of metal down the lane. A cart is arriving, pulled by a donkey with a limp and driven by a man wearing a hat so wide it could double as a sail. He's the bread warden. Yes, that's a real thing, and he's here to check today's loaves. He hops down and begins inspecting the village's bread supply, tapping loaves with a small hammer. One poor soul gets reprimanded for over-browning. Another is fined for irregular shaping. A third tries to hide their loaf in a chicken coop. It does not work. You watch all this from your doorway, chewing slowly on the corner of your own barley cake like a prisoner eating their final meal. The bread warden glances at you. You hold your breath. He nods once, mutters "acceptable crumb," and walks on. You exhale. And then you remember, tomorrow is market day in the next village over. Which means one thing. Bureaucracy. You'll need to register your goods if you're trading anything, even if it's just a sack of onions or a bundle of turnips tied together with hair. And you'll definitely need to swear you haven't put illegal things in your bread, like rye, or salt, or, heaven forbid, diced beetroot. You overhear someone whisper that just last week a woman was fined for putting spiced nuts in her loaf. The Reeve called it witchery. The nuts were literally just crushed walnuts. Historians still debate whether such laws were about health, scarcity, or just a deep, generational fear of flavor. Salt itself, surprisingly, is regulated like gold. In many medieval cities, you couldn't just go buy salt without paying a levy or having a license. That's why most commoners baked bread that tasted like unsalted sorrow. In fact, salt was so valuable in some regions that it was used as a form of currency, hence the origin of the word salary. You don't even get salt with your salary. You just get blisters. Back at home, a neighbor pokes her head into your window and asks if you want to share a loaf tomorrow to avoid inspection. It's an unspoken system. One person bakes, another pretends they did too, and both hope the bread inspector doesn't bite into anything too suspicious. You nod. This is peasant-level teamwork. Later that night, you try your hand at making dough. There's no exact recipe, just instincts passed down from mothers who judged measurements by a handful and a glance. You mix ground barley with water and maybe a dab of crushed lentils. You have no yeast. Yeast is fancy. You just hope the gods of fermentation are feeling generous. The dough is heavy and sticky, and looks like something dredged from a swamp. You form it into a rough disc and leave it by the hearth to rise. It doesn't. It just sits. Judgmental. You try again. This one puffs up a little, probably out of pity. You eventually slide it into the communal oven, a large brick monstrosity that half the village uses. The oven is managed by a woman named Magda, who can smell uncooked dough from 20 paces. She glares at your loaf as you bring it in. Too soft, she mutters. Needs more ash. Ash? Like, from the fire? Apparently, yes. You sprinkle in a dash of ash from the hearth, because why not? You're already using rainwater and hope. The loaf bakes slowly. It turns vaguely golden. Magda sniffs it once, nods, and lets you take it home. You cradle it like a newborn. Back at your table, you break the loaf in half and offer a piece to a younger boy. Possibly your cousin, possibly just a neighbor who keeps showing up for meals. He takes it and nods silently. The loaf is dense, chewy, and completely unsalted. But it's warm. And for a few brief minutes, the world feels like it's made of kindness instead of mud. Later that evening, A small commotion gathers in the square. Someone tried to sneak some rye into their barley mix again. You watch from a distance. The reeve is yelling. The accused is crying. A chicken is stealing unattended crusts. You finish your dinner in silence, chewing slowly, pretending your loaf isn't half ash and wishful thinking. Then, just before heading to sleep, you hear a sound that chills your spine. The goat is back, standing near your window, staring again. Tomorrow, you decide you'll confront it. Maybe. The goat is still there. You wake up with a start, blanket askew, mouth dry, and the distinct sense of being watched. You shuffle to the small, glassless window and confirm your suspicions. The goat stands motionless, like some horned statue of quiet judgment. You wave at it. It doesn't blink. You close the shutter slowly, not breaking eye contact. That's a problem for later you. Today is market day in the next village over, and you're one of the lucky few chosen to escort a cart of turnips, 2 sacks of dried peas, and a chicken that may or may not lay eggs depending on its mood. You're also in charge of protecting the cart. From what, you ask? Bandits? Wolves? No. From potholes. You set out early. The air is brisk, the sky still shaking off its dawn haze. The cart creaks like it's made entirely of old men complaining. The chicken squawks at every bump. You suspect she may have a vendetta. The road is muddy and deeply rutted. You try steering the cart clear of the worst divots, but the wheel finds every hole like it's drawn to them spiritually. A turnip falls out. You retrieve it. It's now 40% mud. You shrug and toss it back in. Halfway there, you pass a monk walking barefoot in the opposite direction, humming. He blesses you and offers a crumb of what might be very old cheese. You thank him and pocket it for emergencies. You never know when moldy cheese might save a life. The village market appears ahead like a lopsided mirage. Dozens of carts, colorful banners, and the scent of 10 different forms of cabbage drift on the breeze. It's louder here, merchants yelling, babies wailing, someone definitely playing a recorder badly. You pull your cart into a designated row, or what passes for one, 2-wheel tracks and a very angry goose, and begin setting up your stall, which consists of a cloth thrown over a crate. You stack your turnips in an appealing pyramid. The chicken perches on top. No one dares move her. As customers drift in, you begin your pitch. Fresh turnips. Possibly the cleanest in the county, you say, as one rolls off and lands in horse droppings. You pick it up, wipe it on your tunic, and reposition it. Show must go on. A woman approaches, examines your peas, and sniffs loudly. Last week's were less dusty, she says. You nod solemnly. We've had a breezy season, you reply, like that means anything. She buys a handful anyway. You sell a dozen turnips, half a sack of peas, and the chicken, which promptly escapes the moment she's paid for. The buyer doesn't chase her. She's yours again, he mutters. You stare at the chicken, now sitting proudly on someone else's potatoes. She's won. Again. Historians still argue how much freedom peasants had to trade goods. Some villages had open markets. Others required guild approval. In your case, you're technically breaking 3 small rules just by being here. But no one enforces them unless you're making too much money, which you are very clearly not. You wander through the other stalls during a lull, eyes wide at the strange treasures available. A woman is selling wool dyed blue, a color so rare you assume she has powerful friends or dangerous secrets. A man offers you a tin whistle, blessed by a bishop's sneeze. You decline. A teenage boy is selling shiny rocks that look suspiciously like gravel. His marketing skills, however, are impressive. "Only a dozen left," he yells, though he clearly has a basket of at least 50. Children flock to him like moths to mediocre geology. You grab a cup of warm cider from a barrel vendor and savor the spiced tang. It costs a brass coin, which stings a little, but it warms your chest in the most comforting way. Your nose runs from the heat. You wipe it with your sleeve like a true professional. By early afternoon, your cart is mostly empty. You pack up, the chicken now nestled indignantly among the sacks, and start the return journey. Your legs ache. Your shoulders protest. Your stomach growls. Again. But you made a little money. You didn't get fined. The chicken's still alive. You count that as a win. On the way home, you pass the same monk. He's still humming. He waves. You wave back, raising the now half-eaten crumb of cheese in salute. You reach your village by sunset. Smoke drifts from chimneys. Children shout. Someone is yelling about pigs again. You unload the cart, set the chicken down. She immediately escapes and collapses onto the bench outside your door. You pull out your coin pouch. 5 brass coins. Not bad. Just enough for a half loaf of salted bread, if you dare. Inside, the hearth is low but warm. You heat some broth, drink it slowly, and let the ache in your bones settle. You think about the markets, the noise, the cabbage, the gravel boy. You almost miss it already. Then the goat returns. Same spot, same stare. You stare back. One of you will break first. It won't be the goat. You wake to darkness. Not total, terrifying darkness, but the kind you only get in places with no street lamps, no LEDs, no screen glow. Just firelight, the occasional moonbeam, and the muffled quiet of a world settled in for the night. You shift on your straw mattress, which crinkles and pokes at odd angles, and realize your legs feel like boiled noodles left in the cold. Your arms aren't speaking to you, and your back is already drafting its resignation letter. Still, it's evening, and that means supper. Maybe. Hopefully. You light your candle stub, the one you bought from the market, and it flickers with a warm, greasy glow. It smells faintly of sheep. Or maybe that's just you. Either way, it's better than stubbing your toe in the pitch black again. The stew pot over the hearth still holds some of the day's pottage, a murky, chunky blend of lentils, onions, and greens that have clearly seen better seasons. You reheat it slowly, stirring with a wooden spoon that's seen so much use. It's nearly translucent in the middle. You scoop yourself a bowl and sit, letting the warmth seep into your fingers. This is dinner, and lunch, and breakfast tomorrow, if you're careful. You slurp quietly, and it's not bad. Could use salt, but that's a running theme these days. Could use meat, but you're not nobility. Could use anything else, really. But it's hot, it's filling, and it didn't try to escape the pot. You take it as a win. As you eat, the door creaks open and Will sticks his head in. "Still alive?" he asks. You nod, mouth full, and motion for him to sit. He brings a heel of bread and sets it beside your bowl. This is community. It's not flashy, not Instagrammable, but it matters. You talk quietly while the fire crackles. He tells you his daughter saw a fox earlier near the henhouse. You tell him about the ditch that smelled like cheese. You both laugh in that tired way people laugh when they know tomorrow will be just as hard, and they need the moment. After a while, he leaves, and you stare at the flame. It flickers low. The medieval evening is long, and the darkness seems heavier than modern night. There's no hum of traffic, no distant television buzz, no scrolling distractions. Just the fire, the creaks of wood, and your thoughts. Many peasants went to sleep early, not because they were lazy, but because candles were expensive and waking up before dawn was a necessity. Historians still debate how sleep cycles worked back then. Some suggest people slept in two distinct phases, first sleep and second sleep, with a wakeful hour or two in between. Others believe peasants collapsed from exhaustion and slept straight through. Given how your body feels, you'd believe either theory. You lie back on the straw mattress and adjust the coarse blanket over you. It smells faintly of smoke and hay. A mouse scurries somewhere in the thatch above your head. You don't flinch. At this point, unless it's trying to collect rent, you're not interested. You close your eyes, trying to relax. But sleep doesn't come easily, not here. There's the scratchy pillow, the occasional cough from a neighboring hut, the distant bark of a dog. You listen to the fire die down and your own breath slow. You think about tomorrow. There's talk of building a new fence near the woods. That means wood hauling, which means blisters. There's also talk of a visiting merchant with trinkets from distant lands, cloth from Flanders, tin cups, maybe even dyed thread. Not that you'll be able to afford any of it, but still, it's something to see. You drift in and out of dreams. In one, you're back in the ditch. Only this time, it's full of jellyfish. In another, you're baking bread without a license and chased by a sentient loaf named Gregory. You wake, briefly, to the sound of rain on the thatch roof, then slip under again. Somewhere near midnight, your candle sputters out. That's okay. You don't need it anymore. You wake up before the sun. Not because you're an eager early riser, but because something cold and furry scuttled across your ankle. You jerk upright, smack your head on the low rafter, and let out a quiet groan that echoes louder than it should in the pre-dawn stillness. Outside, the air is the kind of damp that clings to your bones. You step out of the hut and into a mist that makes the whole village look ghostly, like it's caught halfway between dream and memory. Your breath curls in white tendrils. Somewhere a rooster crows. Somewhere else, a donkey answers with what sounds like genuine sarcasm. You begin your day as you always do, with aching joints and unrealistic expectations. Your first stop is the communal pasture just beyond the tree line, where the village's livestock graze. You and a few others take turns herding. Today, it's your shift. The animals are already awake, chewing thoughtfully, eyes half-lidded like philosophers of hay. A few cows, a dozen sheep, and one goat that stares at you like it knows something you don't. You grab a crooked stick, because no herder is complete without one, and guide the animals out into the grassland. It's not glamorous, but there's a rhythm to it. Step, tap, whistle, repeat. The sheep wander where they please. The goat ignores you entirely. The cows pretend to understand, but probably don't. You sit on a rock and try to stay awake. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants found peace in these quiet tasks or just used them to rest their feet. On one hand, herding was low impact. On the other, it left you exposed. Weather, wolves, or wandering knights could appear at any moment. And yes, knights were a thing. Especially the kind that accidentally helped themselves to livestock in the name of practice or patrol. You pull your cloak tighter and scan the horizon. All quiet. Just wind, grass, and the occasional sheep scream. You close your eyes, just for a second, and are jolted awake by the goat head-butting your shin. You jump up, chase it half-heartedly, and realize it's just showing off for the sheep. You mutter something under your breath, PG-13, of course, and guide the herd back into line. The goat winks at you, or blinks. It's hard to tell. By late morning, the sun peeks over the trees. Dew glistens on the grass, birds chirp, and the world starts to warm. You pull out your breakfast, 2 cold barley cakes and a pinch of dried peas. The texture is enthusiastic. 1 cake crumbles into your lap, and you scoop it up without shame. Food is food. As you chew, you think about the weirdness of your life. You sleep in straw, work with mud, eat rocks disguised as bread, and yet you're part of something. A rhythm, a community, a machine that somehow keeps going, even when every part feels broken. You glance up and notice someone approaching. Marjorie, the brewer's daughter. She's carrying a jug on her head like it's weightless. She greets you with a nod and asks if your goat has tried to overthrow you yet. You say yes. She laughs. You're pretty sure that counts as flirting in these parts. She shares a bit of her ale, not strong, but enough to warm your stomach, and you share a story about the ditch you almost drowned in. She laughs again. You make a mental note. Surviving is easier when someone laughs at your jokes. Eventually, she heads off to deliver her ale, and you watch her disappear into the mist, jug balanced like a crown. The sheep sigh. The goat paces. You whistle a tune you barely remember. Around midday, a horn sounds from the village. A summons, a warning, a reminder that someone's ox wandered into the bakery again? Hard to say. You herd the animals slowly back, counting them aloud. 1, 2, 3. Pause. The goat is missing. You scan the horizon, heart sinking. Then you see it, standing proudly on the roof of a shed like a woolly gargoyle, bleeding with pride. You sigh, climb up, and retrieve it with the grace of a tired acrobat. A boy nearby applauds. You bow slightly. Back in the village, the horn's purpose becomes clear. It's market day. Again. This is the traveling market, the one that comes once every fortnight, bringing spices, fabric, beads, and strange-smelling ointments sold by even stranger-smelling people. You tie up the animals and head toward the square. The market is chaos, in the most delightful way. Chickens in baskets. Cloth dyed indigo. A man selling magic stones that look suspiciously like river pebbles. You spot a juggler performing for a small crowd, his oranges soaring through the air like shooting stars. Children laugh. Adults pretend not to. You browse the stalls, careful not to touch anything. A pouch of pepper costs more than your entire week's labor. A bolt of linen makes your breath catch. Soft, cream-colored, impossibly clean. You dream of owning something that's smooth. But dreams don't pay merchants. One seller offers you a carved wooden charm in the shape of a fox. He swears it wards off nightmares. You ask if it works on ditched dreams. He laughs and drops the price by a penny. You don't buy it, but you think about it all the way home. As the sun dips low, you finally return your herd to the pasture gate and head back to your hut. Your tunic is dusty, your feet are sore, and your coin pouch is still depressingly empty. But you've survived another day. No wolf attacks, no reeve finds, no falling into your own ditch. Progress. Inside, the hearth crackles weakly. You sip leftover pottage and think about goats on roofs, barley cakes, and a jug of ale shared in the mist. It's not glamorous, but it's life. The rain arrives overnight, not with the dramatic thunder of a storm, but with a steady, whispering persistence that soaks everything before you even realize it's begun. When you rise, The roof above you is dripping in multiple places, some into buckets you placed days ago, others forming new puddles on the packed earth floor. You wrap your cloak around your shoulders, already damp from the air, and brace yourself for a soggy day. Outside, the village is a landscape of brown and gray. Mud churns beneath every footstep, transforming paths into sticky traps. Chickens cluck irritably from under carts. Even the goat looks disgruntled, glaring at the sky like it's taking the rain personally. Today's task is repairing the palisade, the wooden fence that marks the village boundary and, theoretically, keeps out danger. You trudge toward the edge of the village where the structure leans like it partied too hard and never sobered up. The reeve is there, naturally, barking orders like a man who's never lifted a hammer. You're handed a mallet and told to straighten that section over there. It's less straightening and more convincing a soggy wall not to give up on life. You and a few others dig new holes, drag in heavy logs from a nearby pile, and brace them into place with stones and willpower. The mud sucks at your boots with each step, trying to pull you into the earth. At one point, you nearly lose a shoe, and no one helps you retrieve it. That's just how things are. You get one pair per season, maybe. One man tells a story about a palisade collapsing on a neighboring village's goose pen. The geese escaped, took over the square, and refused to leave until bribed with cabbage. He swears it's true. Historians still argue whether this tale is folklore or just too specific to be fake. By mid-morning, your arms are jelly and your hair is soaked. You've inhaled approximately 2 tablespoons of smoke from the fire used to dry out some of the wood. And yet, the work continues. That's the thing about medieval life. There's always more of it. More mud, more logs, more problems. You keep going, mostly because stopping means answering to the reeve. When the wall is finally stable, well, stable-ish, you step back and admire your work. It's not beautiful, but it stands. And in this world, that counts for a lot. The rain lessens, giving way to a gray, watery light. You gather your tools and head toward the green where the washerwomen are setting up near the stream. One of them waves you over. Will's sister, you think. She hands you a tunic, freshly washed, and tells you will found it behind the barn. You thank her, unsure how your only tunic managed to wander off. She and the others are scrubbing linens against wooden boards, chattering about the upcoming feast day. Apparently, there's talk of musicians coming from 2 villages over. Maybe even a flute player who's almost professional. You smile. Any excuse to not dig something is worth celebrating. You help carry buckets for a while, soaking your boots further, and try not to think about how the stream smells vaguely of cabbage and goat. In the Middle Ages, multitasking meant washing your clothes, watering your animals, and possibly catching dinner from the same water source. Health codes were more of a vibe than a system. Eventually, your stomach reminds you it exists. You've had nothing since yesterday's crumbly barley cake and the last spoon of pottage. You wander back toward the center of the village in search of food. There's a man selling hot root mash out of a pot that looks like it survived a siege. You hand him your last 2 coins, and he slops a portion into a wooden bowl. It's warm and vaguely garlicky, and you eat it like it's fine cuisine. Somewhere, a pigeon coos approvingly. A passing friar eyes your bowl and asks if you'd consider donating to the abbey. You consider lying. But then he smiles with such sincere humility. You hand him your last crust of bread instead. He blesses you and wanders off, sandals squelching in the mud. You're not sure if you've made a spiritual deposit or just gone hungrier for no reason. Later, you take shelter under the eaves of the church. It's small, barely stone, but the only building in the village that smells more of candle wax than livestock. You sit quietly, listening to the rain tick against the roof, and try to let your thoughts slow down. Church isn't just for prayers, it's where news is shared, disputes are settled, and social bonds are reinforced. You overhear whispers about a girl who ran off with a tanner, and a boy who saw a fish with two heads. Both stories are equally scandalous. Historians still argue whether church gave peasants hope or simply reminded them how far from paradise they lived. Probably both. As evening draws in, the rain stops, and a thin slice of blue sky appears. You take that as a good omen. You walk back home, tired but lighter somehow. A child runs past you, barefoot and shrieking with laughter, holding a stick like it's Excalibur. You smile despite yourself. In your hut, the hearth is dark. You light it carefully with a sliver of dried rush and coax the flame to life. The warmth fills the space quickly, chasing away the damp. You curl near it, knees to your chest, and listen to the fire's quiet crackle. Tomorrow will bring more mud, more weight, more rules. But tonight? Tonight, you're dry. You're fed. You're still here. You wake before dawn again, though this time not from mice, rain, or goats. Today, it's the bell. A low, solemn clang from the church tower. It cuts through the morning like a cold blade through butter. 1, 2, 3 strikes. You sit up groggily, rubbing the sleep from your eyes with calloused hands. Funeral bell. Someone has died. You pull on your cloak, still slightly damp from yesterday, and shuffle outside into the soft hush of morning. A mist clings to the ground, wrapping around legs and stones like lazy ghosts. You head toward the church, passing others moving in the same direction, faces downcast, eyes red-rimmed or just resigned. Death, after all, is no stranger here. The deceased is old Gilda. She'd been coughing for weeks. Most assumed she'd outlive the crows, but last night, her wheezing faded into silence. You didn't know her well, but she once gave you a bowl of porridge during a storm, so you stand near the back of the crowd out of respect. The priest speaks in Latin, a language few truly understand, but all accept with solemn nods. The grave has already been dug, shallow and narrow, with roots curling through the earth like black veins. Someone places a simple wooden cross at the head. No name, just a symbol. As the service ends, the villagers begin to murmur. Some talk about Gilda's age, no one certain, but guesses range from ancient to older than the abbey walls. Others discuss whether her spirit might wander for a few nights, as the old stories say. Historians still debate whether medieval people genuinely feared ghosts or just used them to explain things like cold drafts and stolen chickens. You walk back through the graveyard slowly, past markers leaning like tired shoulders. Most graves here are unmarked, or marked only with local stones. The lucky ones have small wooden carvings. The wealthiest, nobles, knights, or high clergy, are buried in the church itself, beneath engraved slabs walked over daily by muddy boots and stray dogs. Death isn't distant here. It's not hidden behind closed doors or sterile walls. It's present, immediate. Sometimes, it's even casual. You once overheard someone describe their cousin's death during childbirth with the same tone you'd use to describe burning dinner. Not out of cruelty, just familiarity. Grief is quiet here, and often lonely. As the crowd disperses, you head to the healer's hut. It smells of rosemary and something vaguely sour. She's a wiry woman with sharp eyes and a perpetual scowl, but she knows things. She has willow bark for fevers, honey for wounds, and strange pastes made from roots you didn't know existed. Today, she's crushing garlic and mustard seed into a poultice while muttering about stupid boys and their sword games. You ask if Gilda was sick long. The healer shrugs. Her lungs were tired. Too many winters, not enough warmth. Could have been the cough. Could have been the damp. You nod, even though none of it helps. You buy a small sachet of dried chamomile from her for sleep. She overcharges you, but you let her. As you leave, you pass the village school, one of the more surprising elements of medieval life. Contrary to popular belief, some children did receive education, especially boys destined for clergy or minor office work. Today, a group of them sits on benches while a friar draws letters in the dirt with a stick. A few girls sit nearby, sewing quietly, though one is clearly eavesdropping on the lesson with great intensity. You pause, watching as the friar drills them on the Latin alphabet. He glances up at you and nods. You nod back, pretending to understand any of it. Education is rare. Books are rarer. The ones that exist are kept in monasteries or noble homes, written on parchment made from animal skins, copied painstakingly by hand. You've seen one once, open on the priest's desk. Its pages looked like magic. They smelled like old smoke and ink. Historians still argue whether widespread illiteracy was by design, meant to keep peasants docile, or just the natural result of resource scarcity. Probably a bit of both. You walk past a woman spinning wool on a drop spindle. Her fingers work automatically, twisting fibers into thread as she chats with a neighbor about the upcoming feast day. You stop to watch. She offers you a go at it, and you fail spectacularly. She laughs, kindly, and tells you not to give up your day job. You agree, whatever that is. The rest of the day is quiet, heavy even. Funerals tend to press the air down for a while. You help fix a leaky roof, yours this time, using bundles of straw, some pitch, and a lot of swearing under your breath. The work is fiddly and not particularly satisfying, but by the end, the rain won't come through. Mostly. As evening nears, you head back toward the church for prayers. Not because you're particularly devout, but because in a world where the harvest might fail, the plague might return, and your goat might spontaneously combust, it doesn't hurt to hedge your bets. Inside, candles flicker along the stone walls. Their glow is soft, comforting. The priest talks of mercy, of humility, of eternal rest. You sit on the cold bench and let the rhythm of his voice lull you into stillness. Later, you sit alone on the village green, watching stars blink awake above the trees. You think about Gilda. You think about bread and barley, goats and graves, laughter and mud. Life here isn't grand. It isn't clean. But it is full of struggle, of surprise, of moments like this. A gust of wind brushes past. You pull your cloak tighter and smile faintly. Still here. You wake this time not to the sound of bells or rain, but to singing. Not beautiful, polished singing. Mind you, this is early morning, barely awake, slightly off-key peasant harmony. You rise, rubbing your eyes, and peek out the door to find the village already bustling. It's feast day. You step outside and immediately feel a shift in the air. There's a buzz, an energy, that lifts people's heads a little higher and makes children run a little faster. For once, the village smells less like goats and more like bread. Sweet bread, in fact, with hints of honey and maybe even cinnamon? You follow the scent like a moth to flame. The baker's hut has smoke billowing from the chimney in rhythmic puffs, like the kitchen itself is breathing. A line has formed outside, and people are exchanging gossip while waiting for their turn. Will is there, already holding 2 buns and looking far too pleased with himself. He hands you one without a word. You bite into it, and for a moment, everything else fades. No mud, no blisters, no aching joints. just warm, sticky sweetness and the sound of someone playing a pipe nearby. Feast days were rare but sacred events in medieval life. Tied to religious calendars, they broke the grind of work with moments of shared celebration, honoring saints, seasons, or miracles that may or may not have happened. Historians still argue whether these events offered genuine joy or just temporary distractions from poverty. But right now, you're leaning toward joy. The village green is transforming by the hour. Colorful cloths hang from poles. Someone's roasting something that smells like it once had feathers. Children chase each other with wooden swords and painted masks. A group of musicians arrives, fiddle, pipe, and what might be a rebec, and sets up under the old tree near the well. Their first song is fast, bright, and almost impossible not to tap your foot to. You help hang ribbons along the fence and smile as a boy nearly falls into the stream trying to catch a floating apple. No one scolds him. It's that kind of day. By midday, the square is alive. Everyone's out, young, old, and in between, dressed in their cleanest tunics, or at least their least muddy ones. The steward from the manor makes a brief appearance, mostly to check that the right prayers are being said and the right protocols followed. He disappears quickly, leaving behind only the faint scent of expensive soap. You spot Marjorie by the brewer's cart, laughing with her father. She's wearing a flower crown someone clearly made for her that morning. Petals a little crushed but still lovely. She sees you and waves you over. You exchange awkward greetings, which are approximately 60% smiling and 40% kicking dirt with your boot. She offers you a sip of her ale. It's stronger today, festive, with something fruity in it. You take a long drink and feel the warmth spread through your chest. She grins. You grin. The goat appears out of nowhere and headbutts your leg again. You both laugh so hard you almost spill the cup. Then come the games. A group of lads sets up a log balancing contest over the stream. The goal: knock your opponent into the water using sacks filled with hay. It's ridiculous, wet, and wildly entertaining. You're roped in after your name is shouted by several enthusiastic children. You take off your boots, climb up, and try not to die. Your opponent is twice your size but half your balance. You last 3 swings before tumbling into the stream with an undignified splash. The crowd cheers anyway. Marjorie applauds. The goat appears again, unimpressed. Dripping, laughing, and slightly bruised, you pull yourself out and are handed a towel that might once have been white. A woman offers you a plate of roasted root vegetables and something resembling mutton. You don't ask questions. You just eat. It's hot, seasoned, and actual meat. You consider composing a ballad on the spot. As the sun dips lower, dancing begins. It starts with the musicians playing a slow, looping tune while the villagers form lines. You hesitate on the edges, until Marjorie grabs your sleeve and pulls you in. The steps are simple, mostly walking and turning, but the rhythm of feet on packed earth and the sound of pipes fill the air with something ancient and electric. You dance. You smile. You trip. Everyone does. The sky burns orange and pink as the day fades, but the feast doesn't. Torches are lit. The fire in the center of the green is stoked higher, and stories begin. Elders tell tales of saints and monsters. One speaks of a wolf that walked like a man. Another claims she saw a star fall into the woods and leave behind a silver stone. Someone else insists their grandfather danced with a fairy and lost a week. Most people roll their eyes, but no one stops listening. Historians still argue how much of medieval folklore was believed and how much was bedtime embellishment. But in this moment, as the flames flicker and the stars appear one by one, belief isn't the point. It's the telling that matters. As the night deepens, the music slows. Children fall asleep in parents' laps. The fire pops and crackles. Marjorie sits beside you, her flower crown now lopsided. She leans her head on your shoulder for a moment, and neither of you says anything. It's not perfect. Your feet still ache. Tomorrow promises blisters, chores, and probably the goat again. But for tonight, you are full. You are warm. You are impossibly content. The morning after the feast arrives slowly, as if the sun itself is hung over. You wake with your head spinning slightly, the taste of roasted onions still clinging to your teeth, and straw stuck in places straw really shouldn't be. The hut is quiet save for the gentle snoring of a neighbor through the thin wall. Outside, the village is still and soft, cloaked in the hush that follows any great celebration. You sit up, joints creaking like an old door. The world smells faintly of wood smoke, spilled ale, and someone's regrettable decision to roast turnips at midnight. You step outside into pale, golden light. Everything looks familiar, but softened, as if viewed through linen. Today is a recovery day. Not official, of course. No such luxury exists. But people tend to move slower, speak softer, and forgive more easily after a feast. You find a loaf of leftover bread tucked into your cloak. Someone must have given it to you in the haze of music and storytelling. You tear off a chunk, chew, and wander toward the green. The fire pit still smolders gently, blackened logs hissing quietly. A few children poke at it with sticks. Will is sprawled on a bench, one boot off, shirt inside out, looking like he lost a fight with a particularly feisty chicken. You wave. He groans in greeting. You make your way to the stream to wash your face. The water is brisk, biting even, and it jolts you fully awake. As you splash it over your cheeks, you glance around and notice something new. A man you don't recognize, sitting beneath a tree, sharpening a dagger with calm precision. You approach cautiously. He's older, maybe 40, with a faded cloak and boots too fine for a laborer. He greets you politely, introduces himself as a traveler headed north. Says he heard the music from miles away. He talks with the ease of someone used to moving between villages, slipping in and out of stories. Travelers in medieval times were rare but vital. They carried news, rumors, and sometimes diseases, depending on their hygiene. This man, though, seems clean enough, and as he speaks, others gather, curious. He tells of distant places, castles under siege, a town where a river turned red, probably algae, but nobody here knows that, and a woman who speaks with ravens. He might be lying, but his lies are beautiful. Marjorie joins you at some point, eyes puffy but smiling. She hands you a cup of watered-down ale and leans in to listen. The traveler begins singing a low, mournful ballad about a knight who loved a ghost. The lyrics are strange, the melody haunting. The village falls into hush again, just like last night. Historians still debate how much oral tradition shaped medieval knowledge. With so few books, so little literacy, and no Google to fact-check your bard, stories like this were how people understood the world. Legends weren't entertainment. They were memory, morality, and magic rolled into one. As the traveler finishes, people drop coins into his hat. Not many, most of you are poor, but enough to thank him. He bows dramatically, pockets the coins, and says he'll move on after a rest. He nods to you last, as if sensing you needed the story more than most. Later, you help repair the green. You and will right benches, sweep ashes, collect plates. A piglet runs loose and causes 10 minutes of total chaos. You finally catch it by diving into a hay pile, emerging victorious and covered in straw again. Marjorie applauds sarcastically. You bow deeply. The day wears on gently. It's not free of chores. Someone's cow got stuck in a ditch, not yours, thankfully, and the goat has taken up residence in the woodpile, but everything is softened by the shared memory of joy. Laughter echoes more easily today. Arguments are fewer. Even the reeve manages a half smile. You stop by the blacksmith's hut on your way home, watching as he shapes a glowing horseshoe with steady rhythm. Sparks fly with every strike. He offers to show you how to hold the tongs properly. You try. You fail. He grins. You'll get it eventually. Dinner is light, some leftover stew, half an onion, and a soft-boiled egg that feels like luxury. You sit by your hearth, legs stretched, arms loose, and stare into the flame. The candle stub from a few days ago still works, flickering alongside the fire like a friend trying to keep up. As you chew, your thoughts wander. You think about the feast, the laughter, the music that clung to your skin like summer air. You think about the stories, the ghost night song, and the traveler who somehow knew just what to say. You think about how even in a life this rough, this raw, people still find room to celebrate. It's easy to forget that medieval people weren't just survivors. They danced. They laughed. They flirted. They told stories about stars and saints. They found joy in stolen moments and wonder in small things. A slice of honeyed bread. A girl with flowers in her hair. A goat with impeccable comedic timing. The fire dies lower, casting long shadows on the walls. Outside, the village begins to settle again. You hear someone singing softly, a lullaby, maybe. A baby cries briefly. A dog barks once, then quiets. The stars appear slowly, patient as always. You lie down, wrapping your cloak around your shoulders. The straw mattress feels less scratchy tonight. Or maybe you're just too tired to care. You close your eyes and listen to your own breath. One more day. One more night. Still here. Still human. You wake before the sun again. Your body now finely tuned to the rhythm of life here. But something is different this morning. There's a hush, not the kind that follows rain or sleep, but a stillness that feels reflective. Your limbs protest as you rise, but you know this body now. You know which knee will ache first, how to stretch your back just enough to avoid that awful crack. You're stronger than when you arrived, though your clothes are a bit looser, your boots more worn. You've earned every blister and bruise, every smear of dirt and soot. And in a way, they've earned you. You step outside, and for the first time, really look at your village. Not just pass through it on the way to work or chores, but see it. The crooked roofs, the moss-covered stones, the pale smoke curling into the morning sky. A chicken clucks by, its feet making soft prints in the mud. It ignores you, of course. Chickens here are nobility in their own minds. The reeve walks past, offering a rare nod. The boy who once fell into the stream is now expertly carrying a bucket without spilling a drop. Marjorie waves from the brewer's hut. You wave back. Her hair is tied up today, flowers tucked behind one ear. She's smiling without effort. Today is a crossroads. You can feel it in your bones. The past few weeks have been a lesson in endurance, but also in perspective. You've lived through hunger, blisters, back-breaking work, and terrifying nights. You've smelled things that cannot be described in polite company. But you've also laughed under torchlight, danced barefoot in dust, and shared a loaf of bread like it was gold. The morning is spent helping dig a new well just beyond the pasture. It's hot work, gritty and repetitive. You haul rocks, pass buckets, and end up covered in a fine layer of earth. One man jokes that you look like a statue of yourself. Another says, "At least you're finally useful." You all laugh, actual laughter, not just the polite chuckles people give when they're tired. By midday, the new well reaches a shallow spring. Water bubbles up through the rocks. The bucket comes up full and clear. Everyone cheers. Someone pours the first ladle over your head. It's cold, shocking, and utterly perfect. You shake your head like a dog and grin wildly. Even the goat looks amused. Later, the village gathers to bless the well. The priest speaks words in Latin, flicking water from a sprig of rosemary. Children are allowed the first sips. One girl proclaims it the best water in the world, which earns her a chorus of oohs and a few playful nudges. There's no feast tonight, but spirits are high. It's not about food. It's about achievement, about something built together. A rare and lasting thing. As evening sets in, you find yourself walking with Marjorie again, along the edge of the pasture, where the trees bend like old men watching over the village. She asks what you'll do next. You shrug. You don't really know. Stay, maybe. Try farming, or weaving, or making stronger shoes. She smiles, tucks a leaf into your hood without warning, and says, "You'll figure it out. You always do." The stars rise as you sit beside the old fire pit. It's cold again, and the wind picks up in gentle bursts. Someone nearby plays a soft tune on a bone flute, just a few notes repeated over and over, like a lullaby for the sky. You think about everything you've survived. Let's be honest, you probably shouldn't have made it this far. You've endured diseases with names no one speaks aloud. Slept in straw beside people who snore like thunder. Eaten things that might qualify as crimes in other centuries. You've been cold, sore, scratched, burnt, bruised, and almost definitely infested, though we agreed not to talk about the lice. You've also been amazed by sunrises over frost-covered thatch, by music made from gut and wood, by stories shared beside firelight that wrapped around your ribs like comfort, by the weight of community, by the strength in people who have almost nothing but give anyway. Historians still argue whether medieval life was unrelenting suffering or quietly beautiful. The truth, you now know, is that it was both. People didn't just survive the Middle Ages, they lived them. Fully, painfully, and wonderfully. You lie back on the cool grass, cloak pulled tight, and stare at the stars. And finally, slowly, you close your eyes. 300-word wind down. The stars drift above you like quiet lanterns, flickering gently in the hush of night. The village around you fades into soft shapes, rounded roofs, swaying trees, the gentle outline of the well you helped dig just this morning. A breeze carries the last notes of the flute across the green, and the fire dies low, one ember at a time. Your breath slows. In the distance, the goat settles on a pile of firewood like it owns the place. You can just make out the sound of someone telling a story in a nearby hut, their voice low and soothing. The rhythm of life, so raw and rattling in the day, has softened now, pulsing gently beneath the stars. You shift slightly, straw beneath you rustling in quiet agreement. Your cloak warms you. The ache in your limbs dulls, not from healing but from understanding. They hurt because you've lived. Fully, deeply, strangely. Let the candlelight in your mind flicker low now. Let the sounds of distant laughter, creaking wood, and crackling hearths ease into silence. You're safe. You're still. You're part of something ancient, something that breathes even now in the roots beneath your feet. Sleep comes like a whisper through the trees, wrapping you in the same quiet comfort that once cradled those who came long before. Close your eyes. You've earned this.